we're doing the same thing over and over, you can kind of master everything. It's predictive programming. It's everything has happened before. It's gonna happen again. It'll happen tomorrow.
Mm. Oh, indeed, indeed. What let's get into a couple of questions from the people in the chat.
Okay.
I know they was very excited to get you on here.
Oh, let me
And
get shout
yeah.
out to my homies. Shout out to the Zombies and everyone else. Thank you so much for having me.
Indeed. Shout out to everybody. We got about 3,000 people in the chat.
Yes.
Shout out to everybody listening. Let's get right away to this first question. What's your take on mermaids? They want to know what's your take on mermaids.
That's another species. There's many different people who are genetically connected to the MERS. When you hear the MERS, the MOORs, you don't care about but the Moors, but the MERS, you know what I mean? Because we live in water, actually we breathe in water and we live underwater, our genetic makeup, a lot of you wonderful sea stars are connected to the MERS, meaning you are genetically more cohesive and genetically connected to the mermaids or the mer people or the nomos that exist in the waterways now. That's why in Africa, big up to our homies who were in Africa over in Benin. Benin won't, they tell people not to go in the waters. They tell them not to enter the waterways. And you think to yourself, it's beautiful. The waters look amazing. They demonize the waters. And there's a Christian religious sector over in Africa. Some of you know about it, where they talk about the marine spirits and they demonize any of their people, the people going to the church who are connected to, the marine spirits. Oh, they're possessing you at night and you're going to your husband, because they know genetically some of you come from that world and they want to disconnect you from your connect, because the telepathic messages that those beings, those entities, and they're living amongst us. They have captured pictures and images of them. They're vicious when they come across some of the sailors because they know what happens when they are captured, but some of you are connected to them. So if you personally have thyroid issues, I always say, and I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, I'm not a referee, but I do know something. A lot of people will have hypothyroid or thyroid issues because the gills are here. That's generally connected to them trying to genetically morph themselves back into who they were. And having thicker bottoms, like thicker thighs, that generally is connected, or more blubber, because most of the water beings are bulky. They have blubber to keep them warm in the waterways. That's connected to the water. And also for hair, they always have the Little Mermaid with red, straight hair. That isn't science. Hair that isn't porous, that doesn't collect water, that's non-porous, that's actually more cohesive to be in the waterways, like a beaver, where water isn't pulled in, it kind of protects your scalp. So if I thought of a true mermaid, she would have, and I have a picture of one that someone sent me from Canada that they came across, and it was a dark skin, brown skin, because most mermaids are very dark melanated, and it had light hair because it was getting scorched by the sun, but it would have the curly, beautiful, coily hair because it's non-porous, because it can be in the water. So if you have dreams of being in the water, breathing underwater, that's definitely a detail that you're connected to the mer family. And you should try to reconnect with that by going into the beach and speaking to your ancestors in the waterways. They try to deter a lot of these genetic groups from going there, because once you have that connection, that sync to them, everything will change in your lives. You'll become healthier, you'll be more connected, you'll have better interface in this realm. Yeah.
Somebody asked, and I asked this question before: why are black people, so-called black people, afraid of water if some of us are connected to the mermaids?
That's geoengineering. That's social engineering by Willy Wonka and his League of Doom. They've really tried hard with Christianity and a lot of other, like I said, if you go and listen to some of the jargon in Africa, I mean, I heard about it years ago and I didn't believe it. You have preachers talking about demonizing the mer people, the marine spirits. That's what they call them, the marine spirits. You're going to them. That's purposefully done to disconnect you. And also your cellular memories that are connected to your DNA, meaning cellular memories that you have, that you remember things that your mother did, your father did, your grandmother did. They've purposefully traumatized probably some of your ancestors to disconnect you from you going to the waters to heal. Okay,
Mm,
especially at this time with all the crazy radiation and stuff, you should be going into the ocean to heal because that's the one place that you can literally, and also possession and all that stuff. All you got to do
mm,
is go into the ocean, salt water.
mm. Wow. This is a great show, family. This is a great show. Let's get to another question. There was one I wanted to get to. I don't see it here right now. Somebody wants to know, how do we not come back to this hologram? Hologram, yeah.
You have to get to the highest level. You have to raise your frequency. You have to realize that this is an illusion. And once you know that, you can hack the system. Once you know that this isn't real and that your thoughts create your reality, then basically just raise it. And anything outside of you that's causing ish or creating trauma or challenges, you have to resolve yourself. And as you do, your world is going to change on the outside. How you know that you're at a higher level is that you have less um, trials and tribulations, meaning your world is easier. You walk with
Mm,
ease. Once you're having a lot of lack or victimization, it means that you kind of have to raise up. The higher up you raise, we get extracted, and it's a fact because look at all the native groups. Where did they go? They were extracted right before reset. Okay,
mm,
Mind Unveiled does
mm,
a great. Mind Unveiled is another channel. He does a great simulation of what happens during before the reset, like a hierarchy of this. The bomb talks about all the
mm,
weird
mm,
worms on people right before, and then it talks about the rapture, the ascension right before the cataclysm when they clear, because they're gonna clear it. It's like a
mm,
clearing the set, but you get raptured up, and that's why the Mayans disappeared, the people in ancient Kemet disappeared, the Olmecs disappeared. If you notice, it was only highly melanated people that ended up disappearing. I'm just saying it's a theory, but we'll prove it out after reset.
mm. From your perspective, I'm very interested to know, what are your thoughts on your family members? A lot of
Yes.
people feel as though their family members are NPCs, trying to hold them back,
Yes. Yes.
trying to stop them from ascending. But we're also taught from young, family over everything, blood thicker than water. So a lot of people allow their family to pull them back because they've been programmed that family is thicker, blood is thicker than water. Your family comes first. What's your thoughts on family members?
Family members are like your initiator, your coaches when you first get in this realm. And
Mhm,
once you get to a certain layer and level, you can just kind of allow yourself to grow without being tied into their whatever they're here to do. I see
mhm,
a lot of people having a lot of issues now, especially with the times changing, and they feel kind of you know um, they feel kind of dedicated or like they're always feeling guilty if they move away from the family or the
yeah, exactly.
consciousness.
Yeah.
Um, if it isn't for you, it should if it's for you, it should be with ease. If family members are constantly making you feel um, lesser or questioning your consciousness, that means that you need to kindly just set them aside, wish them well, love them because they're your family. But it doesn't
Mhm,
mean that you have to hold in their frequency and stay around them because all they're
mhm.
going to do is lower and challenge your frequency. I mean, it would make zero sense if you got to this tier and then your Aunt Betty said, "Girl, you know what I'm saying? You're not eating no food. You looking skinny. What you eating? Them vegan food? You hanging with them whole tots? You know what I'm saying? Then that lowers you because then you take on her projection of you. It's best
Right.
to handle people with a strong arm. Was it like football? Strong arm. You to put the strong arm out. You just say, I love you.
Mm,
I wish you well, and keep it moving. You don't have to
mm,
necessarily have the same belief system, but you really should just set yourself apart so that you can evolve independently without being hampered. And if they're
mm,
constantly criticizing you or attacking you based on your conscious awareness, you need to kind of just separate yourself. Leave the
mm.
country.
I'm,
That'll do it.
I'm interested in knowing, what are your thoughts from your perspective. You have a very interesting perspective on a lot of things. Definitely want to thank you for being on this show. It's a great
Thank you.
show. Shout
Thank
out to
you.
everybody listening. What are your thoughts on the sacredness of sex? We've seen certain generations tell the people, don't have sex before marriage. Wait till you get married to have sex. we're watching our society be a lot more loose with sex. The women are not as, they're covering their bodies. They're like, they're doing what the dudes is doing. The dudes is out there hoeing, the women's is out there hoeing, everybody getting it on. Should sex be more sacred, or is sex being sexually active and going out there having a good time? Is there nothing wrong with that in your opinion?
Well,
On an energetic level, on an energetic level.
I mean, sex is an energetic exchange, and you know, my
Mhm,
perspective with intimacy or mating is very, you have to qualify a being. And I always
mhm,
speak to the young women because I think I'm a woman of a certain age, and I think what's gone on is that there's been a lack of guidance and also a lack of self mastery. So,
okay.
I think it's amazing to mate and have that wonderful union, but women should only, because of the way that we're able to bear children, and also we carry our eggs for our entirety of our lives. And the frequencies
Mhm,
that we let inside of our yonis can really impede on the vibration of our eggs, on the healthiness of our biodome overall.
mhm,
So I would
mhm,
say to young women, even though I think what happened is that during the last two generations, young women may have seen their mothers being mistreated, ill-treated. Maybe
mhm,
they've taken on some of that trauma. And some of the
mhm,
social engineering online is purposefully meant to detach us and make us less connected to each other with love.
mhm,
I come from a generation, you would only have intimacy with someone you loved, who loved you. And that
mhm,
would be the standard. And when someone loves you, they initiate your biodome into higher realms of consciousness, and same likewise.
mhm,
So I think, young women, speaking to them, because I'm a woman, I say you have to qualify yourself first by having a certain amount of mastery. And having mastery
mhm,
means that you have honor for your body and the way that you interface with any being sexually.
mhm,
And
mhm,
once you know that you are ultimately meant to encompass a goddess kind of energy, you would only qualify a male before he's able to experience any sexual endeavor with you. And I always like to say, like, I like to, whenever I want to be with someone, I want to feed him because I want him to match my frequency, because our pH changes when we engage with the male. So I
mhm,
want to feed him, and feeding someone and having that intimacy and that connection that way takes time. So
mhm,
he's allowed to court me because
mhm,
now I'm initiating him and bringing him into my frequency by feeding him. So we eat like food, like-minded foods, and
mhm,
thus, and also I can kind of delve into connecting with his mind, seeing how he thinks, what his dreams are, the things that
mhm,
he's hopes for, because now he's telling me how great a father he'll be to the offspring if we
mhm,
have children. I think we
mhm,
aren't qualifying males, and males are very visual creatures. You know what I mean? They like the pretty things, but you have a lot of artificial intelligence out here. Women who are,
mhm,
kind of pasting an imagery, whether it's characteristically, with the whole, a lot of the falsettos that are going on with young women right now, and it's confusing men because now we set the standard for what they engage with, and if we're not keeping it real with how we feel, what qualifies them to even be engaged with us sexually, then we're having kind of like dead sex, because then you're having sex that isn't building,
mhm.
building and bridging two souls together, and really to initiate, to bring in new life.
Indeed. Do you think it will come a time? You mentioned women having the ability to not need men to have a child. What's it called? Parthenogenesis.
Orthogenesis, yeah.
Parthenogenesis. Do you think that will ever, that will become a reality on this earth again, where women don't need men to have babies? And if so, what is that going to do between the relationship between the man and the woman? You think, if that's the standard or the norm?
It's happening. Well, it is happening now. There's a woman in Thailand and also in Africa, and I
Mhm,
think there's more now, where women are starting to gestate and fertilize their own eggs through their bone marrow.
uh,
It's a very you have to be in a certain climate, a certain frequency for that to happen, and
uh,
come from a certain genetic makeup where that's even plausible. Um, I think For the most part, in this realm, as far as dealing with polarities, I'm
Mm,
not sure that that would truly happen, where we would
mm,
kind of divert from each other totally and start just women would just start creating babies on their own, because women in this in ourselves, we naturally have the propensity and the connection to you amazing males. We have that magnetic energy. Even if we're not even a mating kind of mindset, we still have a magnetic pull towards masculinity and males, and wanting to have the hunter and the masculine, the alpha go out and
mm,
hunt and bring home food. We have it in us. So I think that isn't going to be in this reality right now.
mm,
I think they're
mm,
trying to push that. I think
mm,
there's a lot of propaganda and social engineering through the government and through chemicalization of the food to try to make that happen. But
mm.
inevitably, I personally think that the souls know better. You know what I mean? The soul
Yeah.
groups will always initiate partnering sexually with one another to create the highest conscious beings and initiate them into higher orders of, evolution.
Indeed. Let's get to another question from the chat. I see one I want to ask. Where is it? Okay, are deja vus a glitch?
Yes. Deja vu is a glitch. It's a change in the matrix. Yeah. It's when something's been altered. It doesn't mean by them. It could be you've jumped dimensions, or you've jumped into another alter you. You know, that goes into the quantum field, quantum entanglement, when you literally could be coexisting and you change something frequency wise or vibratory wise, and you shift into another alternate reality where you exist. Kind of like the Mandela effect. Is it
Mm,
Bernstein
mm.
Bears or Bernstein Bears? So that deja vu is reminiscent of a glitch, or you permeating into another altered reality.
Indeed. Okay. Somebody wants to know, does love exist anywhere or is it all programs?
Love exists because even if it's a program, it still exists. It's kind of like one knows the other. Yeah, it exists because it is a program, and
Mm,
love is a construct. It's like it's what we think of it. You know what I mean?
mm,
Love for Rich could be very different than love, what I perceive as love for me. We can
mm,
have general likenesses in how love is described or what it means, but it's different for everyone. So yeah, I think love can be programmable. I think that's why some of you have the same type. I've seen people date the same type every single time. That's a program.
mm,
You know what I mean?
mm,
Every time you break up with this one, you just get a younger, version of the same one. You're like, wait, I thought I was getting
mm.
another one. It's a program. We also have genetic programs too. We've been, that's a, we have things that have been initiated in our bodies that initiate us to pull in specific types of mating. You know,
Right, right. All right, next question from the chat. What do you think dreams really are? Are we just awake in an alternate reality?
it can be. It can be.
Hmm.
Dreams on a high. If someone's higher in awareness, then when you're dreaming, you're jumping into an altar. That's
Hmm.
why sometimes you'll go to the same place, see similar people, or you may not recognize the people visually, but you'll recognize them energetically. And you're like, yo, how do I know you? I know you. And you don't know how you know them. Yeah, so I agree. Yeah.
Mm. All right, next question. Is time speeding up?
That's relative to your vibration. And I get that from Dr. Deborah Blair. Because I asked him one day, I was like, because I asked him one day, I was like, everything just seems faster. He was like, it depends on where you are on that funnel. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Are you in the center or are you on the outside? Yeah. If you're experiencing quickening, it just means that everything's becoming more and more tangibly tangible in the higher field. So it may make you feel like everything is speeding up. It's your perspective. That
Mm.
will stop when you match it. So when you reach the tier
Hmm.
where that when you match that vibratory frequency, then you won't get that speeding up. You'll just match uh, the same speed.
Okay, next question. Who are in the Black Triangle ships?
Ah, good question. Well,
Mhm.
there's the ones who have the colored lights. That is, I connect that to the Anunnaki, the
Mhm.
triangular ships. Those are
Mhm.
the ones that you see. A lot of times you see them over Egypt. You see them outside of Africa. You see them sometimes in South America. Those are generally, but you got to be careful because Willy Wonka and his League of Doom have, you know, they have, you know, hijacked technology and have reverse engineered chips that look similar to that one. So you have to look at the lights. And I've only known that when you see the magnetic lights, the different colors, it means a magnetic energy that's more cohesive, they're more positive. When it's white lights, I'm most likely thinking it's geoengineered from the government.
Mm-hmm. Okay, next question. Where's the scene? Where's it at? This chat moving so fast. Wow, I know y'all having a good time. But I seen a question I really like. Damn, where did it go?
Party in the chat. Good
You know,
chat.
it's a party. They having a good time. Damn, I seen a question I really liked. Where is it? Well, I'm sorry, I can't find your question, but somebody in the chat asks, are buildings built over portals to purposely hide or cloak them?
Go ahead. Whoever asked that question, you're one of
Mm.
us. Come on over to the other side. Yes. Ding, 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 ding. Yes. Not all the time, not every building, but a lot of pinnacle buildings, governmental buildings, churches, cathedrals, they're generally built on power points. Whether they're geometrically sound, where they pull in energy, or they're masking portals or stargates. Yes.
Okay, next question.
I like
Hold
your
up.
statue with the mic. That's cool.
Oh, the Buddha. Yeah,
I saw
yeah.
that. I just saw
Yeah,
that.
thank
That's
you.
cool.
Yeah, thank you. That's my homie right there. That's my homie.
I was gonna say something else, but I behaved. Go ahead.
um, does the creator interfere in the affairs of man?
I mean, it depends on his perspective. Aren't you the creator? Aren't you both? So it depends on what you perceive. We're the creators. If you perceive yourself as the creator, the oversoul, then then you are helping or assisting or even what you would consider to be interfering with maybe your ideology or your avatar here. So I think in itself the creator and the man are one and the same. It depends on your perspective. If you see yourself outside of the creator, then I think if you see yourself as a victim of the affairs of the higher realms, then yes.
This is an interesting one. How can a person vibrate higher if they are considered mentally retarded?
Well, who gave them that label? Let's take out the label number one. That label in itself was meant to stamp someone with a physical limitation that would be perceived, perpetuated by people's judgment of it. So let's take that out. And absolutely not. It may limit their ability to convey their feelings or the things that they know or perceive in this reality, but it doesn't denote the frequency that they're able to emit or raise to.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's get to another question. Best way to spiritually protect oneself in this firmament.
Staying out of the ish, stay out of the beef. You know what I mean? If you involved in, if you're always in lured or connected to things that are lower vibrationally, music, food, sexual behavior, engaging in drugs that lower your frequency, the wine and spirits, be careful with the Hennessy, you know what I'm saying? You gotta be careful. If you are consciously trying to protect yourself, your behavior is the number one way you can do so. What you do is what you attract. So just like, let's say somebody's about to attack you, it's like a witch and a warlock. There's like, I don't like you because you're wearing purple sneakers on a Tuesday, and they try and attack you. They aren't able, they can throw the dagger, but it will miss you if you aren't matching that vibration. So the higher up you are, the harder it is for somebody to hit you. It's like a tree that's growing. The first time a tree grows is low. All the weeds are trying to kill off the tree. The tree can barely stay up. Then the tree gets a little stronger. The roots get more settled, and actually the part of the tree, the trunk, gets a little more sturdy. Then the weeds are still trying to get at it, but then there's a point where the tree gets so tall and high, they ain't a weed that can grow within proximity. Okay.
Okay. Let's get to the next question. Somebody asked your thoughts on Jesus. I can't find the question, but
Jesus.
they want to know your thoughts on Jesus.
I think Jesus in itself is a wonderful construct of a being. You know,
Mm,
regardless if it's real or not. I think if that being existed, first of all, if the being existed, I think it would be female, just to
mm, mm,
um, be able to go above and be so loving and nurturing and honoring and forgiving, because it's a very female quality.
mm,
And at the time where this being called Jesus existed, you know, even when you see the 12 apostles, you see Mary Magdalene. I would think that that was Jesus. And it's kind of like when you ever see like the comedic figures and they take off the nose or something, they kind of whitewash something. I
mm.
think they do the same with women. They give men credit for what women did, and they kind of they kind of switch it. So if the character existed, if she or he existed, I think that's a beautiful, you know, being. You know, I personally think that that is a story that's meant to illuminate people or make them act in higher ways, and also make them feel guilty for the sins of the world. You know, it's a little bit of that too. So
Yeah, a sister named Vicky Dillard, she came on here and she said the same thing about erasing history and taking away the woman's achievement and making it a man's achievement. And
yeah,
we was talking
yeah,
about the whole Jesus thing because Rod Hayes said that whole Jesus story comes from ISIS. He was breaking down how
yeah,
it's not really
yeah, yeah.
Osiris, it's
It's
ISIS. So
ISIS. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. They
it's
kind of cloak
very
her. They cloak
yeah,
her. Yeah,
yeah. Very, very, very interesting.
yeah.
All right, we having a good time here tonight, y'all. I'm gonna take a few more questions and then we're gonna get out of here. Before the end of the show, though, is there any information you want to tell the people, like as far as contact info, websites, events,
Oh,
products, services, anything?
service. um,
Yeah.
no, you can come check me out at Fleur Brun. I do have the Patreon. We call ourselves the Zombies. We're on there Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday, working our way out the firmament. I mean, it's a lot of information. We're healing sages. So we about that life. I'm part of the galactic sector, so I know women from all different, and men too, from all different backgrounds and so on. It's a beautiful connective. So you can join us on Patreon. You can join us on Zoom. Like I said, we're on all night. You know, sometimes we don't get sleep. It's like a forever slumber party. And you can
Mhm.
just check out my channel on Flipper.
And let's get to a super chat question. Can we travel to Mars through the ocean?
Yes. Yes. If you can get around the firmament. Yes. Yes. Mars is, and there's a little bleed over of Mars, I think, in Arizona. I, I, I've, I think sometimes they open up these vortexes and they aren't able to close it. So it bleeds over like a jump room. I think Arizona Sedona has a little bit of that bleed over, because when you go to Sedona, it feels like Mars. Even a perception of Mars, it feels like it. So that red dirt, that feeling, that energy, and a lot of it's a portal. So I think yes, you can go under the water if you can get out of the firmament. But again, a reset, a lot of these portals open. If you qualify for those portals, you can access them.
That's why I'm glad to have you on here. You say a lot of interesting things. You say Arizona's a bleed over of Mars.
Yeah,
That's very interesting.
yeah.
Very,
When you go
very
over there, I met a Martian.
mm,
Yeah. It's really groovy. I always say also, for anyone who's having troubles getting over trauma, or they've been hurt, or someone, or it's hard for them, they're sad or they're grieving. When you go to Sedona, there's these rock beings that absorb your sadness and anger. So it's by default, it's their food, it's their loosh. So when you go over there, you'll notice when you go over there, you feel better because they're
mm,
eating your problems. But don't stay too long, because if you don't have problems, they'll create them.
mm.
So I always say, if you have someone who's having troubles getting over some pain or something, and I don't see enough melanated people going over there, go over to Sedona. It's beautiful, and they have this wonderful vegan place where they have like this honey tea that's in this wonderful copper cup. It's what is called chocolate something. It's so good. It's all raw, fresh. Go over to Sedona. Go clear yourself. If you broke up with a boyfriend, you feel sad, go there. If you have a girlfriend and her butt got smaller, go there. Okay, enjoy yourself.
Okay, next question. Are there people who live in underground cities?
Yes, yeah, in different tiers, and you know there's different layers like an onion to this dome. And even though it seems like a flat surface, there's layers beneath it. So there's different tiers. There's grays living under there, insectoids like ant-like beings living under there. The ones with the big noses that are connected to the Malachians, they're living under there. There's a lot of beings living underneath the ground. And there's a lot of underground cities that, Queen Elizabeth the lizard had created so they can get back and forth without you knowing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Where would she go back and forth? Where would
To Denver? Look at the Denver airport murals. There was a direct line from the railroad underneath going straight from the UK to Denver airport. Denver has, anybody who hasn't seen the Denver airport murals, that is a testimony of what happens during the reset. And it's sick. By the baggage claim, you can see it. So they go back and forth underneath the ground. She would do it to travel with, anonymity, and also, unfortunately, that's how they're able to traffic, certain people and children.
Is she one of the people who you would consider a lifetime looper?
Yeah. She hasn't transitioned. She's just changed into a melanated body, surely.
She changed into a melanated body?
Mm-hmm. Because that's the next after reset, those are who are back into power. That's why you see the power structure change, where lunars are being suppressed and vilified, and now you're going to see the illumination of the melanated ones again.
Wow. Next question. What role does twin flames play during this reset?
Well, I love that question. Actually, during the time before the reset, it allows for, because really you have to match a certain vibratory frequency to be able to be raptured or kind of do an exodus, if that's what you desired or you were even qualified to do. But when you're able, this is what I've heard, is that right before reset, a lot of people who have same energetic, like splintered from the same flame, they meet up at that time, because love is the biggest initiator into higher fields of consciousness. So you ever feel love and you're like, everything could be burning outside the house. You're like, I don't care. I love you. Everything about you. I love the way you look, the way you taste. I love you. That is a higher vibration. And when you're able to twin right before, even during what would be perceived as chaos, it actually initiates you into higher forms of awareness and consciousness. And it actually activates you both to be able to leave.
That's interesting. We spend so much time reading books, and we don't realize how important things like love is, loving one another and being in relationships and things like that.
It's the best thing. It's the most amazing feeling to love a being and have trust in them and them in you. And that love is an initiator. I mean, that's why I say to the young women, it's very important for you to only engage with a male, and males for you too, with a woman who loves you. Because that in itself is an illuminator, and it actually helps to heal the body. When your wand initiates her yoni, you actually can heal her. Like if she has something going on health-wise, and vice versa. So if you're healthy and you have love is a high vibration. There isn't anything that matches it. That's why they're breaking up the relationships, because that is the highest form of initiation, is to love. And how many people do you know that are in love right now? It's rare. Okay. Yeah. But that love is what will heal you, help you, and raise your frequency. So I always say, for males, for sun stars and sea stars, try to just qualify people for love. Do they love you for who you are? When you wake up in the rising and he sees you fresh faced, does he love you? Does he care when you're not feeling well and thinks about bringing you some soup? Does she call you when she knows that you're disappointed, that maybe you were looking forward to something and she just knows what to say to you? Does she rub your feet when she knows that you're not feeling well and give you oil baths? These are forms of loving interface, and we have to start doing that. If we talk about African love and Black love and all that stuff, that's what we did. We used to oil our soldiers before they went out. We used to take them and put them in the back and oil him down and tell him, listen, baby, I'm waiting for you. And I'm only waiting for you. And he knew that he was going to battle every demon so he could come home and be with us and his family. That's what we did. We don't speak about that anymore. That movie, what was it, 3000, when the Mayans, so I forgot when he
300? Um,
300, remember? And he went
yeah.
out there. She was pregnant, nurse. Listen, she was giving birth in the water. That man, listen, he was going to go home to her. That's black love. We need to talk about that anymore. And also,
Yeah.
we're softer when we know that our men love us fully. And to be able to have mastered multiple women, you have to be able to master one. And if you aren't able to satisfy her, mind, body, and spirit, then you shouldn't be initiating other relationships. That's why this whole, multiple relationships is funny, because a lot of the men that are qualifying that aren't able to even satisfy and please one woman, make her happy and feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
Because for us, when we feel safe, we love you even more.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, I'm loving this conversation. People here loving the conversation.
See, I behaved, Rich. I said
I
it.
appreciate it. Hey, I appreciate it.
Because I
I
could
want to
go
have
left.
I want to have you on here on a regular. So I need you to behave all the time. I need you to,
I could go left, but I'm behaving.
oh
Yes. Big up
man,
to New York in the house. Anybody from Malvern in New York?
indeed. Shout out NY. Two more questions, then we out here. Let me get to this
Yes.
one. Can consuming animal flesh cause you to reincarnate into that animal?
Um, that's a good question. Um, it places you in, because what you eat is what you are. It's kind of like you hold the vibratory frequency of that animal as well. Like that's why
Mm,
Native Americans, when they hunt a deer, a buck, they would wear the they go around and they dance like the buck. They would initiate. They would feel the connection to that buck. So
mm,
yes, as far as natives were concerned, you could come back an eagle or a deer, but it was always connected to the higher versions of them, if that's what you were initiated to do. It's really hard for you to digress, because that's digressing into an animal. Not saying they're lower, but it's a totally different frequency. They're
mm,
much more impulsive. You would have to lower your you'd have to be really savage, like really like a hunter, like just killing things without thinking, just savage, to really kind of degrade your frequency to be able to activate and reincarnate into animals. People who reincarnate to animals, they've done a lot of heinous things. That's like a downgrading.
mm, mm. Okay. Uh, yeah. A lot of good questions from the chat tonight. I definitely appreciate all of y'all. A lot of good. I can tell y'all really interested in the show. A lot of good
Yeah.
questions and commentary. A lot of good commentary in the chat as well. Last question before we get out of here. A lot of talk on solar flares. What is your perspective and thoughts on solar flares?
It's energetic frequencies coming outside the firmament coming in because of the shift. It's the machinery that's working. So it sends like these waves, like these beautiful rings of energy that
Mm,
come down. They transform you, they change you, they activate latent DNA. That's why it's important to fast. And I say to only do so if you're healthy. I'm not a doctor or anything like that. But if you're healthy, because it allows for you to take full the DNA to be fully activated without muters. Food, alcohol, drugs is all a muter. If
mm,
you are able to take in that prana energy, it actually shapeshifts your cells and turns on latent cells that are meant to
mm,
make you into like meta beings, super beings, where you have mastered telepathy, telekinesis, abilities to also levitate. These are abilities that aren't artificial or by super beings. They happen to you if you basically are your body is allowing the energy to transform it and upgrade
mm,
it. So I
mm.
personally think the solar flares help to initiate you into higher super bodies, like your biodome, to become more efficient for the times we're in.
Indeed. Let me just ask one more question because this is a super chat, and I'm sorry, I'll be missing the super chat questions sometime.
Yeah.
What do you think of the book that talks about the return of Anunnaki in 2022? Their final warning, is it true? They have a black goop that's supposed to wipe the earth clean.
I read the book. Thank you for that. I love it. Thank you, Shaw. That's beautiful. Flower pot. I love your name. Um, it's already happened. So I don't want to be, it's already, the black goo is already been initiated. So the black goo is sentient, but it isn't negative or positive. And we had this discussion last night on Zoom. It's that, I don't know if anyone watched Ghostbusters. Do you remember Ghostbusters,
Mm.
Rich?
Yeah,
And remember like
yeah,
the
yeah.
goo, the
The
purple
goop.
goo?
Mm.
And remember they were playing, that song, like a happy song, and the goo was like happy and bouncing around and everything like that. And then they played lower frequency music and it was like attacking people.
Yeah.
That's what the black goo is. It's sentient, but it's neutral. And it only can be initiated by the vibration that the intent it's being initiated into. So they've already initiated the black goo. This is reset. Everything gets clean, wiped slate. This whole world gets cleaned off, cleared off. It happens. We're in a loop. It happens. It's a AI system, and it's a mechanical system that goes over and over and over again. So it ends. Everything you get raptured, or you stay and you get reincarnated. Everybody's not going. People reincarnate. People are being held in like a net right now. They're not allowed to be reincarnated because we're going into reset. So now if someone transitions, they kind of get held there until reset, and then they come back and be initiated into the nether world. Similar pattern of ascension, changing and evolving, and then they end it and start over again. It's a program.
Wow. Hey, what a show, family. What a show. I want to thank you for coming on the platform and joining us. I definitely look forward to having you on here again. Definitely look forward.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. And thank you everyone for coming in tonight and joining us.
Yeah, I got a lot of emails telling me, yo, you gotta get on the show. You gotta get on the show. So it's good to have you on here. Before you get out of here, once again, tell the people about your Patreon or anything else they need to know to contact you.
You can join us. You see that we every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday we're on Patreon. Working through clues. I have some of the most amazing healing sea stars and sun stars ever. We're about this life, so we're basically supporting each other, loving each other, and initiating each other into higher consciousness. If you're about that galactic light, you should join us. It's a late night. We're usually there long term, but if you really enjoy this,
Isis, on your trip to Mexico, and I've been checking out some of your Instagram pics. I think you visited the museum, correct?
That's one of the places I visited. I also went to the actual pyramids. I went to the whole entire pyramid complex. Was like, whoa.
So listen, there's such a big movement. There's a lot of energy around in the so-called blacks in America claiming America again. I remember coming up in consciousness in the early 2000s. It was all about back to Africa, Africa this, Africa that. And I absolutely love the continent of Africa and everything it provides and the rich history and everything. But I remember it was just the Moors back then talking about we were indigenous. We have all types of movement now. We have FBA, ADOS. We have the brother, what's the brother name? I forget the brother, Dan Calloway. We got so many people. Yeah. We got so many people talking about how the blacks are indigenous. The blacks in America right now we're indigenous here, and we've been here. So it's like there's so much energy surrounding this topic that I'm like, I got to talk to several people about this. So I want to start with, let's start with Isis Wisdom. Let's start, my sister. Let's start with, we're so used to Kemetic spirituality, the Kemetic gods, Kemetic goddesses, Isis, Osiris. What about the American gods? What can you tell me about the American gods that we may have been overlooking while we were studying Osiris and Isis?
Well, one of the things I want to say to you guys is that first and foremost, there was two Egypts. So you had the New Egypt, which is overseas. But the first Egypt was actually in the Americas. And many people do not know this. And I also want to point out as well that, you've heard the term, most people think it's a theory, but I can tell you from cosmic knowledge that it's a very real thing. This planet has been recreated 7 times. And so during the time period, during those 7 times that the planet had been created, Egypt was in different places on Kai. Okay? And so with Egypt being in a different place on Kai, you can begin to start researching old road maps where they were speaking about the very first Egypt. If you guys look at the Mississippi River is actually the first Nile River that took place. And we also, if you look at Memphis, Tennessee, this isn't the Memphis overseas is not the same as the Memphis in the States, but they put a lot of information out there for us to see that's been hidden in plain sight. And if you take the time out and you start studying the old maps, that Mississippi River, AKA the Nile River, And then the various pyramid complex, well, small complexes, but nonetheless, we have pyramids. We had mounds all throughout Utah, all throughout Tennessee, all throughout Arizona. Arizona is definitely one place I would recommend people to go check out, so you guys can see the old world there. It's very prevalent there. When you look at the actual, what appears to be mountains, and they're flat at the top, those are cut down trees from the old world. Those were the old crystal trees that used to grow from the old world. So look at it from this perspective. Egypt has been moving around. So when you look at some of the older maps, you're going to start to see that the one overseas, they call it the New Egypt. So what many people also don't know is that a lot of the pharaohs that they said that they were finding actually came from the Americans, and they weren't revealing that information. Okay, just like when they found the tombs here and the mummies here and the pyramids inside the temple, the Isis temple here in Arizona. You have an Osiris temple in Salt Lake City, and I know you heard about that 12,000-year-old mummy that is found at the bottom of the lake.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
12,000 years, 12,000 years old in the Americas. How long has these other people been here? 6,000 years, maybe 6,500 years they've been here. So if they've been here for 6,500 years, then what is this mummy that they found here that's 12,000 years old? What is that? Atlantis was also here. So you guys got to understand that during the time period when the plants were being recreated, a lot of things were also being moved around constantly. And you also have to remember that back in the day, the old maps showed the United States, the states being listed as countries at one point in time. Okay, so each state, the governor himself was actually the president of that actual particular country. So I'm talking about taking it way back, way back, way back. So we have that in our bloodline. A lot of us have ancient Egyptian in our bloodline. It's just not talked about because we've been programmed to think that that is something that is far away from us. That is something that we're not possibly a part of because of their advanced technology and things like that. We couldn't possibly associate ourselves with that type of greatness. But everywhere you look, they can't hide it. You can't hide it. It's like pyramids everywhere, hieroglyphs are written everywhere in their particular respective languages, but there are hieroglyphs like down there in Mexico City. I saw they have hieroglyphs there. Okay, but their hieroglyphs look a lot different than the ones that you see in ancient Egyptian. What you're going to realize is that a lot of those pyramid complexes were mimicking that particular Egypt. They dedicated, I believe, the Pyramid of the Sun. They dedicated that pyramid to Tahuti, which, if you know anything about Tahuti is the heart of Ra. They dedicated that pyramid to Ra, and they dedicated that pyramid to Horus. So I'm going to talk to you about a wonderful experience I actually had, when I was there, and I actually got a response. I was touching one of the pyramids. I was touching the Pyramid of the Sun because the way they got it set up, they don't let you go up and climb at the top of the pyramids anymore. When you're outside.
You know what I'm saying?
What are you talking about? So I asked them, I said, what the hell's going on with that? And so I had got a download, and what I was told was that the reason why they won't let anybody climb the top of the pyramids is because a lot of the indigenous there was doing massive meditations. And the mass meditations that they were doing, like when that whole thing went down over in Australia, and about 60% of Australia was on fire. What most people don't know is that the indigenous of Australia called down to the indigenous here in Mexico City. The indigenous in Mexico City started reaching out to all the indigenous tribes all throughout the Americas. And they said that we're going to go ahead and we're going to meditate. So they meditated. This happened 3 years ago. They went to the top of the pyramids and they all started meditating for the rain to come over Australia.
Wow.
The indigenous already went to the Australian government and had told them, we can make it rain. We have the power to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And the Australian government, of course, is like, I don't see how you're going to be able to put out this fire, blah, 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 blah. And so that's when the phone call was made and all these things took place. And the people were singing. They were dancing. They were drumming. And they were calling on that rain god, okay? They was calling on that rain god. And lo and behold, what happened? Rain came over Australia, and it rained for a hell of days, and all that fire got put out in Australia. That kind of power right there sent a message about how powerful we are, which is why we're the most hated around the world, okay? But we're also the most favored by the Most High. Our power comes from the Most High. So we just need to understand who we are and understand that the times are changing because the ancestors are now starting to jump into their descendants. And so that whole thing, when you said it seems like there's a big movement that's taking place, you're damn right it's taking place, because it's time for them to give that shit up there in the United States. It's got to go. Those who have been holding on to it for a long period of time, it's time for them to release it. They know that their time is up. They know they only have very limited time before Nemesis starts burning everybody up. Because right now, that sun that y'all dealing with in the Americas right now, it's a different type of sun.
You said Nemesis? That's the name? Nemesis?
Nemesis is over the Americas right now.
Could you elaborate on that?
It's the sun, the black sun. When you look at the sun, you'll notice that the sun looks white. Mm-hmm. Have you noticed how you see the sun white? Mm-hmm. Okay, that sun is Nemesis, because Nemesis is about to bring judgment down on America, a serious judgment. And not just America, and different parts of the world, judgment is coming. Now, I have some videos and things like that I'll be putting up on my channel where you see two individuals that ain't us standing side by side to each other, and a spontaneous combusted on the spot inside of a convenience store. And I've been telling people about Nemesis, and I've been telling people how he's going to start bringing the punishment down. I said, you guys thought I was playing. They've been covering up the stories about at least 100,000 people over in Europe who died from the heat. They're covering up the stories of all the people that are dying in heat in the Americas. They can't stand the heat. I got people hitting me up in Kentucky talking about how they're calling in to the air conditioning companies because it's too damn hot. The air conditioning isn't working for them. My son, who's in California, received to tell me the whole time he was up there visiting, he said, literally, California, where he's at, clear skies. He said, Mom, that sun is burning so hot that nobody's outside now. Nobody's outside because of the heat. So we need to pay attention to the times that we're living in. Nature is going to be the very thing that brings us deliverance.
Ain't that something? You know, I love when I hear individuals like yourself say things like that, as far as the sun and this new sun and it being white, because some things aren't in the books. Like, we always look to books for information, but sometimes we have to use our intuition. I remember driving in Brooklyn about a year and a half ago. I called the brother. I hope he's watching. I called the brother named Alkebalon 44. I said, yo, you notice the sun is white? Why is the sun? Didn't that shit used to be yellow? I was like, yo, the light is like a bright white. I'm like, it's like white. And he was like, he was just like, I'm gonna look into it. But I remember recognizing that and feeling that intuitively. So when you say things like that, I love it, because it's confirmation that I ain't bugging out.
No, you're not.
What I want to ask you, in terms of us having the DNA of Egypt within us, and that's why it resonates with us, would you say, when you talked about the hieroglyphs, because we have that in our DNA, do you think that's why we started doing graffiti on the walls? Because it's in us, and that's like an continuation for what we did in ancient times?
That is correct. And also, it's one of the main reasons why we also don't like to speak the English language. So they created what you call Ebonics, the Ebonics dictionary. We know by spirit that this is a language that we should not be speaking. If anybody does their research, they will realize that the English language is the #1 satanic language in the world. So we, because we're connected to Earth and we're connected to the Most High, we know when something doesn't feel right. It might be on a subconscious level, but we begin to start adapting to our environment. So what we do is we start creating another language system, because at one point in time of day, we only communicated via telepathy. Okay, the people, the Tehakitans down there, and the Aztecs and the Olmecs, which was the most advanced society in Mexico when it was in its prime, they were utilizing signs, symbols, hand gestures, okay, facial expressions. That was their way of communication. So we also had to take in consideration, you know, when you start wanting to go back further and further and further, the English language itself is a limited language. So if you're trying to get deeper information, you're not going to, there's not even terms, there's not even English language terms to define how vast this thing really is.
Right.
Okay. And they tell you, look, when you talk to them, you say, okay, what was your name? And then they give you this long ass pronunciation. And you're like, seriously, what am I supposed to do with that? They're like, that's exactly the reason why we don't even bother to go down that road, because we know you don't have the ability to either pronounce the language because you never heard the language before, or it's so advanced that we're just going to rock with you with frequencies and tones and symbols and things like that. So that was the main way that they used to communicate. This whole thing of us talking is very primitive. And we are going to be returning back to the way we used to communicate, which is via telepathy. We are headed back in that direction now.
Indeed. I noticed that picking up, people being able to call you when you're thinking about them. I've noticed things like that picking up. In terms of the Olmecs, I've heard before that the Olmec heads that we see, these huge heads, like, you know how you said the trees, that some of the trees, they cut off the top. It was like a crystal tree at one time. Some people say that the Olmec heads, those are really people, and I guess they turned to stone. They're not like statues; those are real people at one time. And I guess the person turned to stone or something like that. But that was like an actual person at one time. Have you ever heard of that?
I never heard of that, and not even when I was down there, I didn't hear any tour guides ever mention anything like that. I've never heard that before. What they did mention was how technologically advanced they were. They talked about their system and how their system wasn't ran. Their governing system was a shaman. And so that was the guy that everybody listened to, because the shaman would be able to predict the weather. The shaman would be able to predict the drought. So that way they would go ahead and be able to do the necessary things so they wouldn't go into a drought. The shaman was the one who did the spiritual work and so forth and so on, and gave the guidance to the village or the communities and so forth and so on. The guys were also believed, that the shamans were also believed to be gods. And I asked the tourist guide, I said, you do realize, I said that the shamans were believed to be gods. He said, yes. And he smiled at me because he was like, damn, I didn't know you knew about that. And I said to him, I said, well, not only am I aware about that, I said, I'm also aware that a lot of the shamans in Mexico right now are gods. You know what I'm saying? And so, you know, people tend to want to think always mythical when you start talking about the gods. Okay. When the truth of the matter is that you guys have no idea how many of you that are walking around right now that are actual gods. But you've been stripped of your cosmic knowledge. You've been stripped of your culture. You've been stripped of these different things that would have helped you get on the correct path to where you're supposed to be, so you could begin to know who you are. But because we didn't have that living in the United States of America, and it worked very hard to make sure that we were stripped. So we don't come together and think on a collective level that we can change this shit, because we don't realize how powerful we really are. We don't. And I want to say to everybody on this live right now, and you guys is probably going to trip out when I say this, but I'm only saying this based upon what I've discovered recently. And that is, it is imperative that when you get into these spaces that you always remain grounded. Because what happens is that if you're not grounded, you can get yourself caught up in those other realms, and you can be deceived very easily in that realm if you don't have if you're not grounded. So that whole trip that I took to Mexico City, when I booked all those different events to take place, I didn't even realize until probably the third day. I realized right after we went to the pyramids. I said, this was the most grounding experience I ever had in my life, because of all the phenomena and stuff like that was taking place when I was there. You have to remain grounded in this thing. So when I say remain grounded, I need you guys to understand, so above, so below. If you got gods above, you got gods below.
What you said, some of us are gods. What distinguishes a god from a regular human being down here in this realm?
First of all, their capabilities and their powers is one. Their wisdom is two. Me and you had a conversation about you. Remember?
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
And so if you're on the right path, if you're doing your meditations, if you're doing the necessary things to get different upgrades, because there is ways that you can also do upgrades to get to other levels, then you become completely what we call self-aware. Okay. And that's one of the things I teach in my program is about that. So once that happens, like, you could be a walking God and not know you're a walking God, and you just don't know. Because when you come here, you do a soul contract, and the first thing that they remove from you is your memory, so you don't remember who you are.
Who's they? Who's they?
Anybody that comes on, anybody that's born on the Kai or the planet Earth. When you come here, you must understand that this is a school of karma. When you come here to work out your karma for what you did when you were someplace else. That's why you're here. So when you're working out those different things, what I'm trying to get you guys to understand is that there are certain upgrades and certain initiations that one must go through to get to certain states of awareness. Most people don't know that. People say, "Oh, I'm a walking God today." Yeah, that might be true, but let me ask you a question. What type of elevations, what type of meditations did you do? What type of training did you get done? You know, how did you find this information out? How did you tap into that? Do you know how to tap into that particular power, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? If you don't know how to do these things, then you're not going to be able to get to where you got to go. So the ancient Egyptian mystery schools taught these things. Okay? They taught these things in terms of your upgrades and things that you had to do to elevate, because we understood that you are also human, which means that you are subject to the rules of Earth. Okay? What I came to really appreciate is the human experience. And what I came to appreciate is how powerful the Most High has actually made all of us humans. Because number one, we have something that they don't have out there. Number one, we have the ability to have free will. I told people, I said, you angelic, I said, when you leave from here, you're going to return back to where you came from. I said, angels don't have free will. They also do not have the power to create. So you're here on planet Earth and you were given two abilities: the choice of free will and your ability to create as the creator. We have the right to exercise those things. Out there, it's a different set of rules. The game is played different. The laws are different. If a God gets caught moving against someone's free will, the penalty behind that is very severe in that realm. Where here, you're just going to get karma for it. Okay? So the rules are different. So I've come to really appreciate the human experience in all this. During my journey, there was something that it was crazy how that revelation came to me, because a lot of revelations came to me when I was there. And I think that one of the most important things was that I'm starting to now find out what I'm tied to and what I'm connected to. Prior to me coming down there, I did what we call a ancient ancestral investigation. I wanted to find out who my first ancient ancestors were. Okay, I knew who I knew who the immediate bloodline ancestors are, but I wanted to find out more information about the tribes and so forth and so on. And this is when I found out that I had Arawic in me. Arawic tribe is Haiti, which would make sense as far as my connection to Papa Legba, because I talk to Legba all the time. I couldn't understand what that was. I'm like, why do I have this affinity for you? Okay, well, now that makes sense. Okay, even though I'm Ifa, I still have an affinity for the Voodoo pantheon. Okay. Finding out that I have Aztec in me, finding out that I had Inca, finding out that I had Mayan in me, finding out that I had Apache in the bloodline, finding these things out. So then I started doing deeper research, because I started finding out how these tribes, they were saying they don't know where they came from. So when we went to the Tehakatans down at that complex down there, I asked them, I said, where did these people come from? They literally told me, every single person I've talked to down there has said the exact same thing. We don't know where they came from, and we don't know where the Aztecs came from. They said, we believe that the Aztecs came further north, which would be Turtle Island, and came in and invaded the Tehakatans and took them over, reclassified them, and called them that name because they really didn't even know what to classify them as, right? The Aztecs took over, and they ruled for several years.